3 spine-chilling true summer horror tales revealed. Sinister secrets from the haunted season. Sarah stood at the front of her new house, squinting against the relentless summer sun that poured down in suffocating waves. This modest 2-story home, clinging to a forgotten neighborhood in Indianapolis, seemed to breathe with a history she couldn't shake, a feeling like icy fingers tracing the back of her neck. She had come here to rebuild, to escape the pain of her divorce with her 2 children. But an unease settled in her stomach as the ground beneath her felt more like a grave than a sanctuary. As she unpacked boxes, shadows flitted past the fluttering curtains of the neighboring houses. Even the air felt heavy, thick with secrets that whispered in the wind. When she noticed the messages carved into her wooden fence saying, "Stay away," a chill shot down her spine. Who would do that? It felt like a warning, a dark premonition that wrapped around her chest and squeezed. At night, when the children slept, uneasy whispers drifted through the walls, freezing Sarah's blood. It was a gentle sound, as if old ghosts were sharing secrets meant only for her ears. Determined to uncover the truth behind these unsettling signs, Sarah reached out to Mrs. Hargrove, the local widow who seemed to know everything about the neighborhood, and maybe even everything that haunted it. With penetrating gray eyes, she set down a steaming mug of coffee, her voice quivering with urgency. "This place has its ghosts," she warned. "Families pulling up roots and leaving or disappearing without a trace." Her words settled on the table between them, heavy and ominous. What happened to those families? And why did Mrs. Hargrove's gaze dart nervously towards the window? Just when Sarah thought she might piece it all together, the world tilted even further. One blistering afternoon, her son Jacob vanished. Panic gripped her heart as she searched every room, every closet. When he finally returned, disoriented and breathless, he grinned, claiming a nice man had led him to the park for ice cream. Her skin crawled with fear. A nice man? Where were the adults? Rushing to the authorities was useless. The skeptical stares and dismissive smiles felt like daggers to her insides. Anxiety soon morphed into isolation, as if the world around her had gone dim, and she was the only one left aware of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sarah's investigation yielded whispers among the neighbors, fragments of conversations that hinted at family curses and hidden pasts. The residents carried an unsettling camaraderie, an unbreakable bond forged in dark rituals that she had never known existed. Eventually, a pattern emerged. Families moved in and out like the tides, leaving no official records or goodbyes. Each sunset felt like a countdown, and the friendly banter of her neighbors now seemed laced with insincerity. The peak of summer bore down, the earth scorched and dry, and Sarah stumbled upon the heart of the sinister truth, the very ceremony her neighbors performed, their smiles hiding a grotesque reality. They had all conspired, wrapped in a web of deceit, where families like hers were merely vessels, sacrifices for a dark force lurking just below the surface of their quaint existence. As the whispers surged in her mind, circling like vultures, she braced herself. What would it take to confront this monstrous wave, and would she succeed in shielding her children from becoming another chilling tale in this haunted suburb? The answer loomed closer, emerging from the shadows that stretched just beyond her reach. The sun sank lower, casting elongated shadows that twisted and reached across the cracked driveway like skeletal hands. Sarah paced the cramped living room, the unease in her stomach now a gnawing dread. Jacob's laughter had faded into an eerie silence, and a growing sense of desperation clawed at her. She knew she couldn't bury her head in the sand any longer. Something had to be done. That night, her dreams were haunted. Faces of the missing families twisted and morphed, their eyes wide with silent screams of warning. She awoke gasping, drenched in sweat, the whispers echoing around her like a lullaby turned nightmare. The shadows in the corners of her room felt thicker, denser, as if they had conspired to keep secrets from her. She could feel them pressing in, suffocating the breath from her lungs. Determined, she crept down the creaky stairs, each step amplifying her heartbeat. The house seemed alive, and with every bump in the night, she half expected to see a figure watching her from the darkened corners. She needed to confront Mrs. Hargrove again. Surely, there was more to uncover, a chance to extinguish the torch of fear that threatened to consume her. Under the moon's pallid light, Sarah approached the widow's home. The familiar outline loomed in front of her, but tonight it held a different energy, almost electric. She knocked softly, the sound swallowed by the thick stillness. Moments stretched like hours until the door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Hargrove's frail frame wrapped in a shawl, eyes wide as if she had been expecting Sarah. "Come in, dear," her voice trembled. The interior was dim, an unease enveloping the room. "It's not safe to speak outside." As they settled into worn armchairs, Sarah pushed through the dread. "I need to know what is happening here, Mrs. Hargrove. What really happened to the families?" Mrs. Hargrove's gaze flicked towards the window again, unease creeping into her features. "They didn't just leave," she whispered. "Some of them got taken. By what you think you know." She paused, inhaling sharply. "It's worse than you can imagine." A cold shiver crawled down Sarah's spine. "Worse? How? What do you mean?" "Each summer, when the heat rises, they hold the ritual. It's an offering to ensure prosperity, to keep the darkness at bay." She clutched her shawl tighter. "They need new blood, fresh sacrifices. That's why families vanish, Sarah. They don't just move, they're taken." Stunned, Sarah's mind raced. "And my children? Are they in danger?" Mrs. Hargrove leaned closer, her eyes wide and terrified. "You must get them out. Tonight. Before it's too late." Suddenly, an unexpected noise sliced through the tension, a longing cry from Jacob, echoing through the open front door. Panic surged inside Sarah. "Jacob!" she screamed, bolting toward the sound. As she dashed outside, shadows slinked from the houses, their forms shifting and pulsating, closing in around her. The chilly air was thick with an ominous weight, and Sarah's heart raced. She could feel the presence of unseen eyes, watching, waiting. "Jacob!" she called again, dread coiling in her throat. The street was silent, too silent. The only response was the soft rustle of leaves, the whispers growing louder, spinning tales that clawed at her sanity. But someone was watching her from the darkness. Transitioning now, as she turned, the heart-pounding anticipation built within her chest. What twisted fate awaited her children? What did the darkness truly want? The answers loomed just beyond her reach, unwinding in the shadows. In that spine-chilling moment, she didn't know if she had the strength to face what lurked in the heart of her new home. But she had to try. And as she turned back towards the house, she could swear she heard a faint giggle, a familiar sound that sent icy terror coursing through her veins. Was it Jacob? Or had the darkness already made its move? The world around Sarah distorted, almost breathing, as the shadows contorted like living beasts. The faint giggle echoed again, bouncing off the walls of her mind. Was that Jacob? She felt a knot tighten in her throat. She took a step back, scanning the darkened street, scanning for any trace of her son. "Jacob!" Her voice cracked, desperation clawing at her insides. A flicker of movement darted across her peripheral vision. The streetlight's weak glow barely penetrated the darkness, but Sarah was sure she saw a figure at the edge of the yard. Heart pounding, she rushed towards it, fear propelling her forward, but it was merely a wave of wind stirring the tall grass. "Where are you?" She took shaky breaths, the chill wrapping around her like ice. A soft rustle drew her attention back towards the house. Had someone else emerged? The door had creaked open an inch, and her heart jumped at the sight of the stark outline of Mrs. Hargrove. "Get inside, dear." The old woman's voice trembled, echoing the urgency of her eyes. "It's not safe here." She hesitated. The warmth of inside clashed violently with the dread outside. A decision gnawed at her: stay and risk facing whatever was lurking, or run into the darkness and seek her son. "Jacob!" She screamed again, as if the name alone could pull him from the void. Suddenly, the air shifted, heavy and charged as time slowed. She felt it, a malevolent force creeping closer, suffocating the space around her. It whispered her name, a jarring mix of her voice and something else. The laughter curled back, twisting into something wicked. "Sarah," it purred, the sound wrought with malice that hung like a storm. Her heart thundered, and fear protected her legs from moving. "Help me. Please." A small voice beyond the shadows, tinged with panic. "Jacob." The sound of her son's voice snatched the breath from her. She turned back toward the door, and Mrs. Hargrove's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with unexpected strength. "We have to go. I can't hold it back." Sarah jerked her arm free, bolting up the stairs. She sprinted inside, slamming the door behind her, pressing her back against it, panting heavily. "We need to find him." Mrs. Hargrove shook her head, tears in her eyes. "No. They're here. They're never far." The walls trembled, shadows flickering at the edges of the room, as if reacting to the urgency of Sarah's heart. Her frantic eyes darted around, desperately searching for Jacob as a sickening realization wrapped around her heart. What if he wasn't just outside? What if he had already been taken? That thought sliced through her like ice. She turned, eyes wild, pleading. "What do we do?" Mrs. Hargrove steeled herself. "The ritual: we must go to the graveyard before they come for you. We need to break it. Before it's complete." Without waiting for any protest, Mrs. Hargrove hurried to the battered front closet, pulling out a faded flashlight and a rusted spade. "Follow me, now." Loud thuds echoed from the outside. Figures lurked near the windows, dense shapes avoiding the light. Their low hum was a chorus of dissonant voices pulling her into the embrace of dread. Heart racing, Sarah did what she could. Grasping the flashlight, she followed after Mrs. Hargrove, whose determination held a flicker of resolve in the growing darkness. As they reached the door, ready to escape, the front yard erupted in laughter. "Join the fun!" the voices cried, swirling through the air. Then there it was again, a faint call against the cacophony of shadows. "Mama! Jacob!" She lunged for the door, fear clawing through her veins as she pushed against the bone-chilling aura outside. The shadows beckoned her, the overwhelming sound almost bursting her eardrums. Then she noticed them, figures emerging from the dark, hollowed faces barely glimpsing through the mists. They were moving closer. "Sarah!" Mrs. Hargrove screamed again, urgency pulling at her soul. "We need to go now or we're next." But just as she turned to flee, Sarah felt a hand gripping her ankle, a child's hand. She looked down, breath catching. It was him. "Mama, help me!" Terror gripped her heart. She could pull him free, but the shadows were closing around like hungry wolves. In that electrifying moment, she had to decide: save her son or confront the encroaching darkness. The chilling whispers promised her secrets but held a terrifying price. What would she sacrifice to bring Jacob home? The madness spiraled, and as she reached for him, the ground shook underfoot. Shadows danced with horrific glee, tighter, darker. But before she could grab hold, the darkness spoke one last time. "Lose yourself to save him." And in that chilling instant, Sarah's mind raced. What did that truly mean? Everything fell silent as Sarah's heart raced, the shadows retreating for a second, as if they were waiting. She felt the grip on her ankle tighten, cold and clammy. Was it truly Jacob or something darker? Desperation surged as she tried to free him. The figures outside were closing in, their laughter turning into a spine-chilling chant, words she couldn't quite comprehend, yet they felt ancient and powerful as they echoed in her ears. "Jacob!" She screamed again, her voice cracking, desperation clawing at her throat. "Don't listen to them!" Mrs. Hargrove shouted, her voice breaking through the cacophony. "They can twist your thoughts, make you see what isn't there." But Sarah couldn't think straight. Her entire world narrowed down to the little boy's terrified eyes looking up at her, and the insistent pull of the shadows around them. The laughter surged, vibrating through the ground, a chorus of sinister joy that filled her with dread, mingling with an overwhelming sense of urgency. "Stand still, please!" she gasped, yanking at his hand, but it felt as if roots had tangled around his little arm, anchoring him to the earth. Panic squeezed her chest as she yanked again. "Let go!" With a surge of strength, she pulled harder, her foot slipping slightly with dread. She looked down, terror flickering in her eyes. Fierce shadows danced around her son, twisting like smoke, their whispers seeming to materialize around them. "Join us, little boy. Join the fun, stop it!" Sarah screamed, anger mixing with fear. She couldn't let them have him, not like this. She felt the chilling power of the darkness press against her, threatening to suffocate her spirit. "I'm coming for you. I will bring you back, Jacob." In a last desperate attempt, she dropped the flashlight and grasped the spade, wielding it like a sword. Shadows recoiled, their laughter faltering as the edge of cold metal caught the luminous beam of a distant streetlight. She swung it towards the fabric of darkness around her son, hoping to cut through their tight grip. The ground shook violently, and Sarah lost her balance, falling to one knee. She saw Jacob look at her with wide eyes, as fear fluttered across his face. The shadows drew nearer, their shapes distorting into nightmarish forms, revealing hollow eyes and open mouths that crooned a dreadful melody. "Sarah! What are you doing?" Mrs. Hargrove's voice sliced through the chaos, laced with urgency and fear. "We need to leave now." "Not without him!" Sarah screamed, squaring her shoulders, determination fueling her resolve. Clenching her jaw, she forced herself to focus. Light. She needed light. Fumbling for the flashlight, she barely caught it before it tumbled into the shadows, flicking it on as the beam pulsed with brightness. The effect was immediate. The shadows recoiled, their laughter shifting into shrill wails. "No! Light! Stay in the dark!" The darkness revealed flickers of anguish and rage, but there was Jacob, his tiny hand still gripping her ankle, pulling him further from the abyss. She threw the beam towards him, desperate to illuminate whatever fettered him to the earth. "Just a bit more. I can almost reach you," she urged, feeling strength leave her body as she fought against the dark tide. But then she heard it again, a voice like honey coated with poison, whispering directly into her mind. "Go ahead, Sarah. Save him now and lose your will forever." The air crackled with tension. What did it mean? What would it cost? Would she sacrifice her very soul for him? In that moment, the ground trembled beneath her as the darkness surged forward, a tidal wave of despair swallowing her light. She needed to act, and fast. She thought of her son, their laughter, their shared joy. She wouldn't abandon that. She raised the flashlight high, her eyes blazing. "I refuse to give in." But the shadows surged, weaving intricate patterns around her and Jacob. She could almost hear their thoughts, their sinister promises of peace if she just let go. "Help me, Mama. I'm scared," Jacob cried, the innocence in his voice cutting through her resolve. "I'm coming." She lunged forward, ignoring the pulsating dread, and grabbed his hand tightly, prepared to fight through the darkness for their survival. Then it happened. The shadows enveloped them both, and the world turned into an endless abyss of whispers. The last thing she saw was Mrs. Hargrove's face, a mix of horror and pity, before everything faded. And in that chilling instant, the darkness whispered, There's no escape. When it faded, she found herself in the graveyard, the moon glowing eerily overhead. But something was wrong. The stones whispered her name. And as she turned to see Jacob, it was not him, but a figure wearing his face, cold and distorted. "Let us play," it called, the voice a twisted echo of her son's. What had she unleashed in her desperation? As shadows lurked deeper into the graves, Sarah realized the truth: she might never truly find Jacob again. What was waiting in the darkness could be far worse than she ever imagined. The graveyard was alive, and she was not the only one who sought to break the binding rituals of the dark. "Mommy," the figure called again, and Sarah's heart drifted to dread as the wind carried the sound further into the night. What had she awoken that night? And could she ever go back? The air felt heavy, thick with silence as Sarah stood in the graveyard, her heart pounding against her ribs. The moon hung high above, its light casting long shadows that writhed and danced like malevolent spirits. She blinked hard, trying to convince herself that she was dreaming, that this couldn't be real. But the figure before her, the one that wore Jacob's face, was all too real. "Where's my Jacob?" she whispered, terror climbing up her throat. Her mind fought against the betrayal of her senses, struggling to comprehend this twisted replica of her son. "Mommy. I'm right here." It cooed, tilting its head in a way that sent a chill straight to her bones, a grotesque parody of innocence. Its eyes, once filled with joy, now held a depth of darkness she couldn't fathom. She could almost see the shadows swirling behind its gaze, tugging at reality itself. "No!" Sarah gasped, staggering back. She felt the damp earth against her legs, knuckles brushing against the cool grass as she lost her footing. What have they done? Panic flooded her. The figure took a step closer, fingers stretching out, elongated and sharp. "Play with me. Don't you remember the games we had? We could have fun forever." That voice, it should have been sweet, should have comforted her. But here it came, tainted and coated in despair. How could something so familiar sound so foreign? The shadows behind the grave stirred alive as the ghastly landscape morphed. Tombstones twisted into malevolent faces, their grim expressions leering at her from the corner of her eye. Sarah scrambled to her feet, backing away, but the figure continued to approach, its movements smooth and unnaturally fluid. It was no longer Jacob, it was an echo, a taunt. "Come play," it crooned, the laughter now layered with a disturbing harmony, the graveyard joining in with menacing sighs and whispers. "They all want you to join. They miss you, Mommy. Stay away." She shouted, voice raw, heart racing as she brandished the flashlight like a shield, its beam flickering against the encroaching shadows. But the illusions knew how to toy with her. From the depths of the graves, more figures emerged, all wearing familiar faces twisted into spiteful grins: old friends, family, people she'd lost. All beckoning to her with open, stained arms. One of them was her mother, long gone, a once comforting presence now contorted in sorrow and darkness. "Sarah, my dear," her mother's face spoke with a sing-song lilt, "come to us. Join us in the dark. You'll never have to leave again." "No." Sarah couldn't breathe. Whispers tormented her thoughts, battling with the primal instincts calling her to flee. She was losing her grip on reality, her own memories lurching at her like phantoms clawing for her essence. With a bold resolve, she shook her head. "You're not real. You're just shadows. You can't have me." The shadows writhed angrily, a wave of dark fury crashing against her shield of light. The beam flickered once more, casting an uncertain glow in the encroaching chaos. Desperation gripped her as she turned back to the figure of Jacob, that familiar face now twisted with disdain. "Where is he? Where's Jacob?" "Where he belongs," the voice echoed, a mocking reverberation that sent her instincts spiraling. That was no child's voice. It was a siren's call. Suddenly, a surge of determination washed over her. She could not yield to this nightmare, she needed to reclaim her son, no matter the cost. Gripping the flashlight tight, she plunged deeper into the graveyard. Shadows clawed at her heels, but she would not let them take her. What if Jacob was still out there, fighting against this darkness? What main force lived behind those shadows, and what had they done to him? As another wave of shadows swirled and consumed the night, she could only think, whatever she confronted, it wouldn't take her. Not without a fight. But as she pressed forward, the ground beneath her quaked, and the whispers crescendoed into a chilling roar. And then she felt it, an icy touch around her throat, the shadows wrapping around her like a vice. Pulling tighter. Sarah. The voice was not Jacob's. Come home. It was an invitation, laced with promise and dread. Would she succumb to the darkness, or could she break free to find her son? The silhouettes grew bolder, and just as she thought she could resist, the earth trembled, and she fell into the abyss of shadow. Forever, what awaited her in that suffocating void? Would she find Jacob, or was she too late? Sarah fell into the void, the darkness swallowing her whole. Panic clawed at her chest, taking her breath. The echo of whispered promises surrounded her, a symphony of agony and longing, a trap calling her home. She hit the ground, not hard earth but something soft and wet, like moss layered over a grave. The air was fetid and cold, filling her lungs with the taste of decay. Shivering, she scrambled up, heart racing in the pitch black around her. Jacob! She cried, her voice a fragile thread in the suffocating silence. The darkness pressed against her, alive and writhing. She reached for the flashlight, but it flickered and died, plunging her further into the abyss. But then wait. There was a light, dim and faint like a dying star. Sarah felt hope clawing at her insides. She moved toward it, each step careful, the ground beneath crackling like old bones. Mommy! A voice called, distant but clear. It wasn't the twisted mocking she heard earlier. This was Jacob, his voice free of corruption. Jacob! She hurried, stumbling toward the sound. Fear twisted tightly in her gut, urging her to turn back, to retreat from whatever lay ahead. The flickering light grew stronger, casting jagged shadows that danced around her in grotesque forms. Figures shifted and slithered, faces resembling people she knew contorting into anguished sneers and distorted cries. Join us, they hissed, reaching out with elongated, shadowy hands. Go away! She shouted, swallowing her fear as she felt the warmth of the light on her skin. You don't own me! Suddenly, a sharp, icy hand gripped her ankle, pulling her back into the shadows. Desperation washed over her, she fought to remain standing. The darkness was relentless, its whispers turning into furious shrieks, drowning out Jacob's voice. Help me find you! She screamed. Mom! The brightness surged, illuminating a narrow path ahead. Heart racing, she followed, forcing her feet to pump faster despite the icy tendrils threatening to drag her down. Each step felt like a battle. The comforting sound of Jacob's laughter rang through the air, mingling with the angry howls of the shadows. Mommy, come play! No! She screamed, grounding herself in determination. I will not play with you. The path opened into a clearing where the air sparkled with an unnatural glow. And there, in the center, was Jacob suspended in a prison of shadows, eyes wide with fear. The shadows morphed, oscillating like a turbulent storm, eagerly hungry to claim him. Jacob! She lunged forward, hands stretching out to grasp him. Mom, help! But the moment her fingertips brushed his, the shadows shrieked, their moans trembling through her bones, yet they released their grip. She yanked him free, but not without a price. The darkness roared in fury, the ground buckling beneath them. Sarah felt its cold breath against her neck. You can't take him! She cried defiantly, but her voice faltered, uncertainty creeping back in. As they turned to flee, the shadows coiled tightly around her legs, dragging her down, threatening to pull her under once again. No! I won't lose you, Jacob. She fought, every ounce of her strength poured into freeing herself. "Mom!" Jacob's voice was strained, filled with pain and fear. Rage boiled within her, rage against the darkness, against whatever malevolent force had kept them apart. She tore free with one last surge, digging her heels into the ground, and with a final primal scream, she hurled herself forward, pulling Jacob with her. The shadows whimpered, momentarily paused, and in that second of hesitation, light radiated from her very soul, chasing the darkness away. Tendrils retreated, melting as Sarah and Jacob broke free into the faint glimmer of moonlight. But just as relief began to settle in her chest, the coldest chill enveloped her again. "Sarah," that dreadful voice returned, echoing from the shadows, promising what was lost and leaving behind a chilling question: what if darkness wasn't finished with them yet? What waited in the shadows to claim their souls once more? Sarah stumbled forward, grasping Jacob's hand tightly, the icy grip of the shadows still lingering on her skin. Her heart hammered in her chest, matching the quickened breaths that echoed wildly in the quiet of the moonlit clearing. She could still hear the dreadful whisper, Sarah, reverberating like a death knell in her mind. "Where do we go? What do we do?" Jacob's voice quivered, pulling her back to the present. His small face, pale and vulnerable, filled her with both anger and fear. They had escaped once, but the nightmare wasn't over. "I don't know," she admitted, panic spilling into her voice. The night felt deeper, the shadows stretched longer. They were out of the abyss but not yet safe. "Mom! It's coming!" Jacob screamed, his eyes wide with terror, pointing into the darkness. She turned just in time to see them, a horde of shadowy figures retreating and advancing in a swirling storm, forming jagged edges like teeth ready to devour them. "Run!" she ordered, yanking him towards the edge of the clearing. The trees loomed ahead, but each step away from that bizarre light filled her with dread. The glow they had known felt like a false sense of security now. As they dashed forward, Sarah could hear growls and whispers, an angry chorus chasing them into the woods. "Come back, Sarah, you can't escape!" The voice slithered through the air, its echo twisting her insides, gnawing at her resolve. The trees throbbed with oppressive darkness, their branches like skeletal hands trying to grasp at them. She could feel cold fingers graze her skin, her stomach knotting with each phantom caress. "Mommy, I can't keep running," Jacob wailed, the strain evident in his soft voice. He stumbled, almost falling. "I'm tired." She knelt beside him, urgency igniting her fear. "Just a little longer, sweetheart. We can't stop. We've got to find somewhere safe." As she helped him up, dread filled her. The night was alive with murmurs, the shadows whispering her name, scraping against her psyche like nails on a chalkboard. "Join us!" "No!" she shouted, shaking her head wildly as if she could physically push the voices away. "We will not join you." Suddenly, without warning, the ground beneath them shifted. The mossy earth buckled, swallowing the memory of warmth and light. The pain of endless betrayal radiated through her, tightening her chest. "Jacob!" she screamed as he was ripped from her grasp. She lunged forward, but a wall of darkness rose, solidifying into a barrier, cutting them apart. "No! No!" She pounded on the invisible wall, fear choking her. Jacob stood frozen on the other side, tears streaming down his cheeks, a silhouette against a sea of despair. "Mommy!" he cried, his voice cracking. The shadows lunged, their hunger palpable, and Sarah understood then her child was bait, and she was trapped in their gruesome game. Racing thoughts spiraled in her mind, searching desperately for a way to break through. "Jacob!" She struggled against the oppressive darkness, feeling its claws scrape against her soul. "I will find you. I promise. You have to leave this place." The voice throbbed again, echoing with sickening glee. "Join us or lose him forever." A sickening dread washed over her. What if it was true? What if she couldn't save him? She fought against the despair creeping in, still able to hear his whimpers. Suddenly, from in the depths of terror, a flicker of memory sprang forth, the songs he sung at bedtime, the smiles they shared, the warmth of their love. The darkness couldn't take that from her, could it? Jacob, focus on me. She shouted, desperation clawing her voice. Remember our song. Remember what we promised. Mommy, his voice faded, engulfed by the shadows around Sarah, but the determination in her heart surged again stronger than before. She would break the darkness's hold. Taking a step back, she planted her feet firmly in the damp earth and screamed, "You will not take him. I will not let you win." In that moment, the darkness recoiled, a seething mass hissing like steam from a wound. But the shadow's claw-like reach hadn't diminished. Sarah knew it would be a fight for survival against an entity that thrived on despair. With renewed courage, she set her jaw. She was not just fighting for herself anymore. Little did she know, as she faced the gathering storm of shadows, the true horror was just starting to unfold. What if this darkness was only a fragment of something much larger, something waiting for her to unravel? What more terrifying truth would she discover? Sarah's heart raced. Every whisper of the shadows coaxed her deeper into madness. Shadows danced, flickering at the edges of her vision, ever evolving, feeding on her dread. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, as she forced herself to focus. "Jacob!" She shouted again, pushing against the wall. The suffocating barrier that separated them felt alive, pulsing like a monstrous heart. "Hold on." But her voice was swallowed whole by the void. The darkness shifted, swirling like a storm above her, and Sarah fought against the fear curling like incense smoke in her chest. "Think, Sarah, think. There must be a way," she muttered to herself, her breath coming in shaky gasps. Then she remembered the lantern they'd seen at the edge of the clearing, just feet from the barrier. The dim light flickered in her mind like a flicker of hope. If she could reach it, maybe she could find the strength to break free. "Jacob." She aimed her voice straight into the void. "Focus on the light. Focus on me." If only he could hear, if only he could hang on to that memory, that spark of warmth amidst the cold grasp of despair surrounding him. A deafening growl rumbled from the shadows, vibrating through the ground. The figures swelled and pulsated, responding to her call with aggravating intensity. "Leave now or witness your child's demise," the voice shrieked like a banshee, reverberating in her skull. Each jagged syllable sliced through her resolve, but fury ignited inside her. "You think I'd leave my child? I'd rather die than abandon him." She stepped back, breathing heavily. She was more than just frightened. She was furious, and anger was a flame she could wield. Shadows writhed closer, but Sarah shut her eyes against the darkness. The lantern's warm glow beamed fiercely in her mind. "Come on, sweetheart," she murmured to herself, "you're not gone. You're right here." With one swift motion, she darted toward the barrier, arms outstretched, shoving against the void with every ounce of strength. Her body shook, her essence brimming with fierce determination. The whispers were deafening now, gnawing at the edge of her sanity, but she stood firm. "Hold on, Jacob. Just believe." As she pressed forward, a flood of warmth coursed through her and she squeezed her eyes shut, pouring her heart into the void. Something shifted. The shadowy wall flickered like film burning in a projector. She could feel the thrum between hearts, binding them together. Then, a bright spark ignited in the pit of her stomach. The shadows recoiled, hissing and writhing like a snake denounced. They shrieked in agony, and for a brief moment, a pathway opened, revealing Jacob, his tear-streaked face barely visible through the cascade of darkness. "Mommy!" he cried, the sound piercing her heart like an arrow. Sarah surged forward, the light blazing within her, pushing through the treacherous threat. The shadows clawed at her, some wrapping around her ankles while others swiped at her eyes, but she didn't falter. In that intense moment, everything slowed. The figures were angry, desperate, trying to pull her back. But the warmth of Jacob's spirit surged alongside her, giving her wings. She could see him, she could reach him. With one final push, she yelled, "We will not fade into fear." All at once, the ground erupted with a flash of blinding light. Shadows writhed and screamed as a fissure erupted between them, a chasm of light separating the horrors they defaced. She launched forward into the abyss, arms swinging wide, heart racing like a meteor. But as they wrapped around each other, the shadows began to close in once more, gathering strength, forming a massive wall once again. The duality of light and darkness clashed as Sarah held Jacob tight, trying to shield him from the encroaching void. "Please," she whispered to the shadows as terror seeped back in, "we just want to go home." A sinister laugh echoed from the depths of the darkness, making her stomach churn. "You cannot escape so easily. You are part of us now." Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled again, cracks unfurling. Energy pulsated and merged with the shadows as though a gate had been shattered wide open, revealing something even more unsettling behind it. The two of them stood on a precipice, the noise of the world above drowned out by the sinister whispers below. And before them, a new horror awaited, eyes glinting and mouths stretching into nightmarish grins, all waiting for their turn to play. Had they merely traded one nightmare for another? With rising dread, Sarah thought, what if this was only the beginning? The shadows pulsated fiercely as Sarah clutched Jacob's small body to her, both trembling in terror. The sinister laughter echoed around them, each note a promise of despair. It felt as if the air itself was thick with dread, pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. "Mommy. I'm scared," Jacob whispered, his voice trembling like a fragile leaf caught in a storm. She tightened her grip, willing strength into her son. "I'm right here, Jacob. We'll get through this," she insisted, but anxiety gnawed at her as the darkness hissed like venomous serpents, coiling closer. A low rumble surged beneath them. The fissure pulsed with a sickly light, throbbing as if alive. The monstrous shapes that hovered in the distance began to shift, grotesque forms morphing with the flicker of light. Hollow eyes glared at them, jagged grins stretching across their shadowed faces. "Look away, Jacob." Sarah forced herself to face the shadows, anger sizzling in her veins. "You don't scare me." But the laughter grew louder, more mocking. "Foolish woman. Your defiance only feeds us." It was almost a chant now, echoing around them like an incantation. The ground quaked again, splintering further as the distorted creatures edged closer. Eyes gleamed, catching reflections of the flickering light, and their mouths opened wide, revealing rows of glistening teeth. "Mommy!" Jacob cried, gripping her tighter. Panic flooded her heart as she felt the darkness ripple beneath them like quicksand, hungry and eager. Then, from the depths of the gloom, a figure stepped forward, cloaked in a darkness deeper than the night. It moved slow, deliberate, a predator savoring the thrill of the hunt. The atmosphere thickened, the shadows recoiling momentarily as if respecting a powerful entity. "Do you think you can escape?" it asked, voice smooth yet laced with malice. "You took something from us, and we demand it back. It is our right." "I took nothing. Just let us go," Sarah shouted, the desperation spilling over, her voice cracking. "That is where you are mistaken. You have already chosen. Your souls are bound." It paused, eyes narrowing, the very essence of darkness swirling around it. "By your fear." With a swift movement, the dark figure extended its hand, and instantly, the whispers morphed into screams, drowning her in a cacophony of losing hope. "Fears unbound, boundless forever," it intoned, and Sarah felt the shadows wrap tighter around her. "No. She wouldn't let this thing take them." It was a monster, a parasite feeding on despair. With renewed anger, she shoved Jacob behind her, drawing on the warmth she felt for him. "Listen to me. We are stronger than this. Remember who we are." The chill in the air thickened as the shadows hissed, recoiling slightly. It revealed cracks in their armor, a glimmer of the bond between mother and son pushing back against the tide of darkness. In that moment, Sarah's heart pulsed with fierce determination. She closed her eyes, summoning every shred of love within her. Together, she whispered fiercely, igniting the light she felt inside. Suddenly, light erupted from her hand, illuminating the area around them. A radiant beam cut through the darkness, piercing the oppressive gloom. The creatures shrieked, retreating, shadows recoiling from the incandescent glow. Now, Jacob. We run. Hand in hand, they bolted forward, fueled by fury and hope. But just as they approached the threshold, a wall of darkness formed. The figure reappeared before them, sneering. You think it ends here? This is only a taste of your doom. A new wave of shadows surged forward, swirling like a storm, eager to reclaim their prey. As the darkness loomed, Sarah's resolve flickered but refused to snuff out. No. We will not be part of your nightmare. We are alive. Their cries echoed across the chasm, reverberating against the darkness. But then Jacob's eyes widened in horror, and Sarah turned, just in time to see the shadows spill forth, collapsing on them like a tidal wave. Mommy! He screamed, the sound a raw, primal cry of survival. As the two were engulfed, Sarah realized this. Darkness was more than they had imagined. Were they truly escaping, or merely succumbing to the very horror they sought to flee? And as the chill of despair wrapped around them, Sarah felt a chilling certainty. This was only the beginning of their darkest journey yet. What awaited them in the depths beyond? Sarah could hardly breathe beneath the thick, suffocating weight of the darkness that surrounded them. It pressed in on her like a vice, squeezing her determination and hope into a tight ball of panic. Shadows slithered around, whispering terrible things in a language that twisted reason, fueling her fear. She clutched Jacob's hand tighter, unwilling to let go. Jacob, just hold on. She shouted, her voice breaking through the veil of fear. The shadows recoiled slightly at her defiance, and for a moment, she felt a flicker of strength surge through her like fire. We need to find the light. We can't let them take us. Sarah focused her thoughts, picturing that strange, flickering lantern they had seen earlier. It was a beacon of hope, a promise that they could escape this nightmare. Follow me. Hand in hand, they surged forward into the darkest depths. The cacophony of ghostly cries crescendoed, swirling around them like a living shroud, trying to pull them back into the void. You can't escape. That haunting voice shouted, each syllable like shards of glass cutting into her resolve. No. We are escaping. Sarah screamed back. Each step felt like wading through tar, but she urged her legs forward, propelled by a relentless love that pushed against the encroaching despair. We're stronger than they are. Jacob squeezed her hand, embers of courage igniting in his young heart. Keep going, Mommy. He urged, his voice an echo of her own determination. They pushed through until they spotted it a glimmer of light, faint but undeniable, cutting through the oppressive gloom. Hope bloomed anew in her chest as they sprinted towards it. But before they could reach the salvation of the lantern, a ripple of shadows surged, forming a quicksand-like barrier. Stop! The monstrous figure appeared before them, its cruel eyes glowing menacingly. You will not pass. Every step you take brings you deeper into our grasp. Sarah felt her heart plunge. The reality of this nightmare weighed heavily. We will not let you win. She cried defiantly, physically pushing against the fear that sought to envelope them. Jacob, remember our song. In unison, they began to hum the tune they always shared. Their voices melded together, creating a harmony that felt like a lifeline, intertwining their spirits despite the darkness that surrounded them. The shadows hissed and twisted, recoiling slightly with every note filled with their love. Do you think you can drown us in music? The figure snarled, the darkness swirling like a storm of anguish. It lunged, an angry wave reaching for them. The lantern flickered, illuminating their faces against the encroaching shadow. Pushing through the terror, Sarah focused on the light. "We are light. We will not be darkness." The shadows twisted, screeching in anger, but her heart was ablaze with fierce love for Jacob, her unyielding will propelling them forward. "We're almost there," she shouted, kicking against the darkness that threatened to pull them apart. Suddenly, the light surged, filling the night with a radiant glow that surged like a pulse through the darkness. The malevolent figure bucked, howling in rage. "No! You cannot resist forever." In that moment of truth, Sarah yanked Jacob close, their hearts aligned as they charged towards the lantern's flickering brilliance. The sound of her pounding heartbeat echoed in her ears, drowning out the whispers that wanted to take them. She wouldn't stop. They couldn't stop. With one last desperate push, they leapt toward the lantern. As they collided with the light, a deafening crash erupted. The shadows roared in heartbreak, torn apart by the incandescent glow as their tendrils shrieked into vapor. All around them, figures dissolved, fading away into nothingness. The air thickened, tinged with darkness and flickering light, colliding as the shadows writhed, twisting and shrieking. "Jacob!" Sarah gasped, holding him tightly as they were enveloped by a brilliant shine. The storm of darkness succumbed, swept away in a wave of blinding luminescence. A moment stretched forever. Then they tumbled, gasping, into bright summer air. The sun filtered through the trees, their leaves glinting with golden light, the warm embrace of reality. "We did it." Sarah pulled Jacob closer, heart racing as the memory of shadows began to fade like a half-remembered nightmare. "Mommy, are we safe?" His voice trembled, eyes wide with a lingering fear. "Yes, sweetheart. We're safe." She hugged him tighter, tears mixing joy with relief. They stumbled forward together, sunlight washing away the remnants of dread that had cloaked them. But as they stepped into the warmth, a flickering darkness lingered at the edges of her vision. Forever a whisper threaded through the air, haunting yet fragile. It sent shivers through Sarah's core as she shook it off. No more. They might have escaped this night, but she would never let her guard down again. They were alive, and that was enough. "Come on, Jacob. Let us find Dad," she urged, a spark igniting in her soul, her fingers entwined with his. As they walked away, leaving behind a nightmarish echo, the sun blazed like a shield. Sarah knew they would always carry the memory of darkness, but love and light would guide them. "Mom, what was that place?" Jacob asked, his voice small yet steady. "A place we won't ever visit again," she said, resolve hardening in her heart. "But we'll always face our fears together, no matter how deep the darkness." And as they melded with the sunlight around them, Sarah felt a twinge of unease that she would learn to ignore. This summer had its secrets, and she had triumphed over one darkness. But the world was vast, and every corner still held echoes of the past. It's time now for you to take action. You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that could send chills down your spine. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who love a good scare. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. And flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. The moment is now. Be a part of our chilling journey.